All right. Good evening, everybody. Let's give it a moment for everyone to get into the program here. Usually just takes a moment for all to file into our virtual auditorium here. Welcome. We're very glad you all chose to spend the evening with us here. So my name is Benjamin Neely. I'm the Executive Director of the Berks History Center. It's my pleasure to welcome you all to tonight's program, Difficult Beginnings for Berks County Women Serving on Juries. This is one of our third Thursday programs, and it's our third Thursday program, which is a tongue twister. And we're very grateful to our friends at Herbine and Company for allowing us to borrow their Zoom platform for tonight's program. And I'm also very happy to welcome members of the Berks County Bar Association who are joining us this evening. Thank you very much for zooming in with us here tonight. I think you'll be well rewarded for your time. Just a couple of quick announcements here. We have, if you enjoyed tonight's program, if this is your first program you've done with us and you're enjoying it, head over to our website, berkshistory.org, where we have a listing of more programs just like this that are coming up. We also have some in-person programming that we will be doing, and the biggest one this spring is May 15th, and it is our Spring Road Ramble, and it's an auto tour, and we'll be sending people on a journey to visit a number of different sites from different eras of Berks County history. You'll see some beautiful country, and it's a great program, particularly now. You can pile as many people you want in your car. Tickets are per car. Head on over to our website, again, berkshistory.org, to learn more. And if you like what you find there, maybe you want to follow us on social media, and you can find us by searching at Berks History, and find us there on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter, where we share lots of stories and announcements there as well. So we hope we'll see you, continue to see you come into these programs. We do sell memberships to the Berks History Center, and if you're not a member, well, we can fix that. Again, you can do that through our website, or you can give us a call at 610-375-4375. And we have folks there Wednesday through Saturday who can, 9 to 3, who can help get you signed up. And one of the greatest things you'll get as part of your membership is copies of historical review of Berks County. It's our quarterly magazine. It's a very nice magazine, very well done, been in continuous print since 1935. And if you're a history buff, I think you'd really, really enjoy it. So tonight's program has been on hold for a while. This was supposed to be part of a program. We did an annual history conference in the spring each year. And of course, that was one of the many things that was canceled due to the pandemic. And this last year's conference was really special because it was celebrating the centennial of women's voting rights. And we had some really nice programs put up, and the presenters have been very gracious to do their programs in a virtual format. We've tried to get them all on the schedule here to carry on, because they did a lot of hard work and research to put these programs together. And we really appreciated their effort and wanted to make sure that everyone had a chance to benefit and enjoy what they were able to find and put together for us. So really excited to have this program tonight, and I'm very glad to have you all here. Here's the Q&A box. If you have any questions, go ahead and put your question there, and we will hold all of that to the end. At the end of the program, we'll open up the Q&A box and we'll go through them. I'll help Brian. I'll open it up and read them out to him. And if you're viewing at home, if we have any technical difficulties, hopefully we don't. If you've done enough Zoom programs, you know that generally can be little things like the screen freezing up, or imperfections with sound quality. Usually just giving a minute and it will pass. But if they persist, we'll be having the same experience at home as you, and I will communicate with Brian behind the scenes that we're having issues, and we'll see what we can do to rectify that. But without further ado, I'm going to turn the mic and stage over to Brian Engelhardt, who's one of our trustees at the Berks History Center and volunteer. He's done so much for us, and I'd like you, Brian, just to imagine everyone on their feet, uproarious applause as you take the stage.
Yes, indeed. Well, I can't see anything other than the screen. Anyway, thanks for tuning in tonight. A couple of things. Welcome to everybody from the Berks History Center. Welcome to everybody that's not from the Berks History Center, and welcome to members of the Bar Association. What we're going to talk about is the main focus is problems of women jurors in the early days of when women became jurors in Berks County. We're going to talk about some other things too. Originally, this came out as a result of an article I did on the courthouse, whether it was going to move to West Reading or back to Reading or stay in Reading. There's an article called The Battle of Line Box Hill in the Historical Review a couple of years ago. And in the process, I found out about the old courthouse and wrote an article for the barrister for the Bar Association called Problems the Women Jurors Had in the Early Days. And so we'll be talking a little bit about the courthouse. We'll be talking about a lot of the people involved in this. And it spans just more than the initial couple of years of the jurors, but it'll be less than an hour. So anyway, don't worry about that. The other thing is Bar Association members are watching this. I know they're watching it because they think it'll be fascinating and engaging, but they'll also get continuing legal education credits out of this for an hour. And I believe everybody that is registered through the Bar Association has gotten their materials. If you didn't get your materials through the Bar Association, contact the Bar Association and they'll give you the credit form to fill out, and they'll also give you the supplemental materials, which you'll then want to get laminated. They're fascinating. And also, as the words of Groucho Marx, there will be 2 secret voids here during the program, passwords that you will need to note. And at different times during the program, I will say the secret void. And so there you go. So, okay. Let's go to the next slide, first slide. Okay. August 18th, 1920 is the year that, the day that the ratification of the 19th Amendment, giving women suffrage, granting women suffrage, passed. And that's kind of a landmark day for several reasons. But from the standpoint of the juror issue, the question was, did that mean that they could become jurors, or did that just mean they had rights to vote? Either way, it meant they had a lot more rights than they had before, women did. And prior to that time, on the federal level, what we had was a Constitution interpretation written in 1880, constitutional interpretation by Justice William Strong, who practiced law in Reading, as you can see the little asterisk on the screen there. And Strawder versus West Virginia, there was a good part of that opinion and a bad part of that opinion. The good part of that opinion was Judge Strong wrote that West Virginia statute that barred Black men from serving on juries violated the 14th Amendment and was not something that gave them equal protection. The bad part of it was he went on to say, but by the way, a state can confine selection to males, to freeholders, to citizens for jurors. So it basically underscored that it's okay to continue to discriminate against women and not allow them to serve on juries. That he said that's not what the 14th Amendment was designed to do. So that's what. So Berks County, I'll say his Berks County practice we'll get credit for the good part of that opinion. The bad part of that opinion came from elsewhere. That's so there we have the backdrop for federal constitutional law on juries as in general. Several states, however, did allow under their own laws that women could become jurors. They could serve as jurors before 1920. Women in Portland, Oregon, there's a picture here of registering for jury duty in 1912. They were forerunners of progress. The interesting thing, just real quick, Wyoming. Wyoming as a territory allowed women to have the right to serve as jurors. And then Wyoming became a state, and they said, the first thing the legislature did was they said, no, women can't be jurors. And then I think it was 70 years later, women got to be jurors again in Wyoming. So that just was so it wasn't as uniformly, women weren't uniformly precluded in all states. So there was all kinds of back and forth about what would happen if women were jurors. And there's a number of cartoons. I have a few of them here. There were various prejudices or stereotypes that were talked about or part of the argument. One was if an attractive murderess, that's what the caption says, would never be convicted if the jury was all men. And in the balloon in the background, whether you can read it or not, you can't get a jury to convict a good-looking woman. All right. That was one of the stereotypical prejudices that was. And then we move on. Now, on the other hand, if the jury box is all full of women, this attractive woman, even if she would be guilty. And the two fellows in the back, the attorneys, I guess, are saying, well, if we had a jury of men, we would get her off, even if she is guilty. So that was another prejudice as far as, well, if you have women as jurors, they're going to do that. And this was an this was a pro-suffrage cartoon. The anti-suffrage argument or anti-letting women be jurors argument was they're too sentimental. And they have a picture of a bunch of men sobbing there, as you can see, that they were just sentimental as the woman litigant is hugging her attorney. And so there was other sides to the argument. They had a lot of fun with cartoons back then. Charles Dana Gibson basically is famous for his development of pictures of independent, refined women in the 19th century, which eventually became known as Gibson girls. His wife was his #1 model, and he had a lot of pictures that were very complimentary. As I said, they're independent looking, refined women. And he had some fun with the way that they were portrayed. He said, if we have women that look like or jurors, this is what it would look like in a courtroom. And that wasn't anything other than him projecting. And then he got a little more political 2 years later. The jury of the future, one that might temper justice with mercy, is what he called it. And there was women and men looking intelligent and focused on what was going on in the trial. And the concept would be that the qualities of both genders would bring out better traits as far as human judgment. So there you go. So that's what we are dealing with as we're going into the political fray. So what did we have to do to get women's suffrage? The suffrage movement started 1848 officially with the Seneca Falls Convention. And for the next 70 years, there was a movement to move it ahead, for lack of better words. Anyway, what needed to be done to get the constitutional amendment approved for the women to have the right to vote was that the House of Representatives had to pass the approval for the constitutional amendment, which they did on May 19th, 1919. The Senate then passed it. And then after that, 75% of the states had to ratify it. So starting in 1919, June of 1919, the states began to ratify it. 35 states had ratified it, and finally we get to Tennessee, August 18th, 1920. The Tennessee lower house, after the Tennessee Senate approves it, they say, okay, we're here. And except they said in the lower house, well, we might not want to keep being, maybe we'll think about it tomorrow. Maybe we'll unapprove it. Well, good news, they didn't unapprove it. Okay. And so it was adopted and ratified, 36 states. And what do we see in the Reading paper? Oh my God, we're going to have suffrage shock. Suffrage shock. We have to start making plans all at once. What are we going to do? All these people, we've doubled the electorate. Suddenly the officials in Berks County, like nothing was going on for the last 40 years as far as the suffrage movement. And as far as that they're watching over the last 2 years almost, the ratification go in. It's kind of like the clouds are coming in and you say, oh, umbrella, really? No, I don't need one. And then it's pouring. So there you go. Suffrage shock indeed. How did, what did the 19th Amendment say? You're saying to yourself, Brian, will you please read us the 19th Amendment? Right here on your screen. The right of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or any state on account of sex. And it goes on, Congress shall have the power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation. If I had a deeper voice, that would have been more seriously, but anyway, there you go. That's the drama of the 19th Amendment. So what does it mean as far as suffrage? The dictionary definition of suffrage is the right to vote. Does it mean jury rights? Some states said that means they have the right to vote. They have all other rights as well, including jury rights, but that was not rights to serve as juror. That was not universally viewed. That was not universally viewed. The Reading Times interpreted that to say, oh, they might be on juries now. How about that? But that was an instant read by the Reading Times that probably was premature. So suffrage shock is a phrase that the commissioners of Berks County were, they were in a dither. They were in a tizzy. What are we going to do? We've doubled the electorate. We got voting assessments to deal with. We have to register all these other people. That's just terrible. Well, the Reading Eagle wrote that says there's been signals for several years that suffrage was coming, and they didn't do anything. They didn't prepare. So don't bellyache to us about suffrage shock. You've been asleep at the switch, boys. And the interesting thing is right in 1920, on coroner's jurors, women began to serve on coroner's jurors right away. There was no to do in Berks County. They just started serving. No fuss, no muss. So let's talk about our leaders at that time. There's Marcus Eaches was the Republican commissioner. Walter Wingleader was the Democratic. He was newly elected Democratic commissioner, and Calvin Miller was a holdover commissioner. He was also Democratic commissioner. I once read somewhere where they said, well, he was the Republican commissioner, so nobody ever listened to him anyway. But these were the fellows that didn't do a lot of preparing. So there you have it. Not everybody in Pennsylvania, not every court in Pennsylvania thought that suffrage meant instant right to serve as jurors. Whether you were a juror in a civil or a criminal trial, or serving as a juror as a member of a grand jury, there were situations where women were serving on those in that capacity, and that was the subject of appeals and litigation. Oddly enough, in Erie County, the mayor of Erie was the subject of an indictment for corrupt activities, and the grand jury that approved the indictment, one of the members was a woman, and the judges in Erie County said no, that's invalid because she was not entitled to be. She shouldn't have been serving in the jury. Courts in Schuylkill County and McKean County also ruled that that because women were serving on grand juries, and in one instance as a member of a jury, the judges overturned the rulings of those grand juries and that one jury, a multiple court judge. So you have case law in Pennsylvania, which goes against the interpretation that suffrage means serving on a jury. And now we have the first password for those of you seeking to get continuing legal education credit. Password number 1 is gender. Gender. Okay, password number 1 is gender. Okay, so we have this going on where courts in Pennsylvania are not in agreement with the law. So what do? You take an appeal to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court of Pennsylvania, 1921, Commonwealth versus Maxwell, says grand jury verdict where a woman was a member is valid. The court says that this statute was meant to do exactly what the constitutional amendment should invest women with the right not just to vote, but that with the trappings of that went also with serving on juries. So how about that? Now you got the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania, and you got, no, now we're going to take that up to the Supreme Court of the United States. It's going to be appealed. What are we going to do? What we are going to do is wait for Wallace Barnes, not Calvin Barnes. He's a basketball player. Wallace Barnes comes out of Wayne County with the Barnes Act. And what does the Barnes Act do? The Barnes Act says women in the Commonwealth have the right to serve as jurors in state cases. And suitable accommodations have to be made in the courthouses for women serving as jurors. Suitable accommodations. What do you mean, suitable accommodations, they say? Separate rooms in or adjoining the courthouse have to be equipped with toilets, beds, mirrors, and other conveniences. And further, the county court has the right to order local authorities to provide these accommodations if they don't exist. How about that? So out of Wayne County, way up north, Wallace Barnes comes out with this highly progressive bit of legislation, which both houses adopted it. The governor signed it. What's not to like? Okay, so now suffrage and jury service, it's no longer an academic argument. That's my cuckoo clock in the hallway there. It's cuckoo too long. Okay. Now, there was unforeseen issues that came up nationally as women became jurors, and the Reading Times had this in there. It was in Ohio is where it occurred. And the caption that you can't read is, women jurors in Springfield, Ohio, complained of the open jury box because lawyers didn't keep their attention on their cases. Their eyes kept wandering towards the fair jurors' ankles. They demanded a certain Judge Geiger, who's the guy on the inset, uh, order it a modesty panel. And they just, for those who were like, had lobotomies, below is a fair juror. The Reading Times always liked to have people, women with, where you could see their ankles. Every issue of the Reading Times, they had to sell papers, and the Eagle didn't do that. But anyway, so that was just a feature of the times there. So while the rest of Pennsylvania is moving ahead, and where the law is moving ahead and the like, we have our courthouse at 6th and Court Street, where the courthouse is right now. But this is what used to be there and was built in 1840. There were issues, but you see the swell pillars and a statue on top and the like. That was the courthouse. It was designed by Thomas Ustwick Walter, who also designed the Capitol Dome in Washington. He was famous. Okay. There were issues with the courthouse. It had these swell statues, and we'll go back. That statue was 146 feet in the air, but there was two of them. The first statue is the one with the French hat on top. That was installed in 1840 and was replaced in 1879 by the statue that on your right. The statue on your left is in the Berks History Center. The statue on the right is in the Services Center. So you can experience them. Well, they have fantastic statues, awesome pillars. What was wrong? There was no room in the courthouse. There was no room for records. There was no room for cells. The prisoners in hearings were in cells that were in the courtrooms. It was a wooden structure, so it was susceptible to fire. The walls were falling apart. The steps were collapsing. There were no elevators. It was a 3-story building. And a major deficiency was, drum roll please, there were no ladies' rooms in the whole courthouse. No women's rooms at all. Good news. At least for women jurors, the Barnes Act was going to hopefully ameliorate this situation. By the way, with the lack of space, starting in 1909, the Register of Wills at one point writes a letter to the commissioners and says, I have nowhere to put all these papers with estates. What am I doing? They're falling up. They're filled up all our closets everywhere. And the commissioner said, how about that? The sheriff complained. The clerk of criminal courts complained. So it was a bad situation. So what did we do about it? Well, they talked about it. What else? Did I say it was a major deficiency? Yes. How did they get along without accommodations? Women were plaintiffs, they were defendants, they were witnesses, they were secretaries, they were caseworkers, they were clerks. As a matter of fact, the office of the district attorney, Robert Mays, who became a judge eventually, he was elected in 1920. He immediately moved his whole office out of the courthouse to another building, which had ladies' rooms. The same was done by Charles Sanders, the county engineer. There were social service agencies that were opening up in the courthouse. They moved out right away because a number of their staff members were women. So that was a problem even before the 19th Amendment, which just exacerbated it. But there were no women attorneys in Berks County until, drum roll please, we're digressing just a bit, but Anna Dickinson was admitted to the Berks County Bar in September of 1922. She was a remarkable young woman, and I got to meet her when I was young in the law library once. Anyway, she went right out of high school, and that's Anna's graduation picture from Reading Girls High School, to law school. You didn't have to go to college. She missed out on all those parties, but she went to law school for 2 years. You didn't even have to graduate as long as you passed the bar. And Anna was a remarkable person, and she passed it with flying colors. She was the youngest person, woman or man, to ever pass the Berks County bar at that time. Probably still. And her father was a prominent attorney, but he didn't take the test for her. She was just a very driven, remarkable person. And the interesting two styles of reporting in the paper. One in the Reading Times, woman lawyer on Berks bar. The article talked about that she passed her tests with flying colors, and her being the youngest attorney ever of either sex to pass the bar. The Reading Eagle calls her a girl lawyer, and talked about what she wore. Her hair was bobbed, it pointed out, and she wore she did not wear a hat. They reported that she did not wear a hat, but she was smartly attired in the Reading Eagle article. So, and it pointed out that what she'll do is work for her father. And it just was two different styles of welcoming Anna Dickinson to Berks County Bar. Interesting, they had every few years composites of all the lawyers in the Bar Association. And the 1927 composite, Anna's the only person smiling in that composite. Just everybody else was looking very stern, but not Anna. She was happy. Yeah, I'm a lawyer. That's what I wanted to be. So there you go. So, but I digress. Let's get back to the subject at hand. So the press says, the Reading Times says, it's time now. What are you going to do? Are you going to put the women's names in the jury wheel now? Because you can do it, but the commissioner said, well, there's no accommodations for them. They said, well, while you're doing accommodations, they said this in the editorial, while you're doing accommodations, what you might do is put them in the jury wheel so that they'll be all set to be jurors when you have the accommodations ready. How about that? No, they decided not to. And so for the first eligible year, which would have been 1922, they didn't put any women in the jury wheel. Then the commissioners continued to dither and said, well, maybe 1923, but the accommodations just aren't coming along so well. And the Times wrote another editorial, and the cojones of that editorial said, why not be frank about it and admit the real reason for the failure to comply with the law, which extends jury service to women, is a deep-rooted Berks County prejudice which we are unwilling or unable to shake off. The power of the press. Okay. So what happened? The commissioners changed their mind. That's good. The women were put in the jury wheel. And the headline about 3 women on coroner's jury, just as a reminder that while this was all going on, in the meanwhile, these women were serving on coroner's juries. I don't know what they were doing during the coroner's jury sessions, or what any other women did in the courthouse. I guess they had arrangements, but with regard to accommodations, but that's what they did. So the commissioner said, okay, they will go in the wheel. And Annie Posey, who was married to E.B. Posey, the Republican assemblyman out of Reading, was the first woman chosen for jury duty. And hats off to the paper for calling her Annie Posey, which was her name, as opposed to Mrs. E.B. Posey. And they put the lists of the other women that were also called as jurors as the initial pioneers in the jury wheel. 1,600 people were in the jury wheel. 120 of them were women. There was teachers, there was court clerks and stenographers. They were housewives listed, and they also said some of them were the wives of prominent men. So anyway, things were moving along that women were going to serve on juries in 1923, onward and upward. And in the meanwhile, we had a new crew, except for Chairman Ringler, of commissioners. Francis Savage was a Democrat, and John Blumlein took the role of Republican that nobody listened to. Things were, the women were called up as jurors, and there was a big meeting that was held at the YWCA, where two attorneys, one former judge, Bouchon, and future judge Paul Schaefer, sat down with several hundred women and explained to them the legal proceedings and what they would be expected to do as jurors, giving them some insight and the like. They tried to make it more understandable as far as just getting thrown into things. The comment from the different women that attended the meeting from the League of Women Voters was it was one of the most informative meetings they'd ever been to. So that was a good thing. Good. What was not a good thing was that after that, they really didn't do anything about accommodations. And there was rough going there. One woman was, they had another meeting a couple weeks later, and that was called by Mary Archer, who had been elected president of the League of Women Voters. Just a note about Mary Archer. Mary Archer was a advocate of animal rights. She was an advocate of prisoners' rights. She was an organizer of she was very much participating in the women's right to vote movement in Berks County. She was a protector of the rights of City Park. So in any event, there was in City Park, there was a controversy. Can we build a courthouse there? Can we build City Hall there? And Mary Archer's group said, no, the park is for the park, and let's get the prison out of City Park. So that's what Mary Archer did. You didn't mess with Mary. So she called a meeting with the commissioners and other county officials and said, let's talk. And one woman that was in this meeting talked about she was up all night because there was nowhere for her to sleep, and the jury session went late. So it was a very problematic night for that woman, and everybody listened. They said, well, we can't have that happen again, and we promise we'll have better accommodations. So everybody left and said, well, that's good, that's good. Unfortunately, 3 months later, they were back having another meeting, that really wasn't coming along so well. And they said, well, now we really will promise it'll go better. Okay. If you were ever curious about what it means to dither, what are we going to do about this courthouse we have with inadequate space, with violating the law of the Barnes Act, with even before the Barnes Act, just being appallingly uncivil with half a whole gender not having restrooms. So if you take a look at these headlines, 1924, Commissioner Ringler says, we're going to take the first step. Yep. Yeah, it's kind of like New Year's Day. I'm going to do push-ups a lot this year, and I'm not going to drink as much. Okay, never mind. Then 1925, Commissioner Ringler says, yep, it's time to start our change with a court. We got to do something about this courthouse. Well, we moved faster to 1927. The courthouse space, we got to do something about the courthouse space. Commissioner Ringler has a press conference, we got to do that. And 1928, the commissioners say, yeah, we have to set up what the voters really want to do about this. We have to look and see what the public wants. The commissioners didn't address the fact that they had the power to do things. They kept saying, we're going to look for the public will. That's what we're going to do. Yeah, the public will. That's right. So we move on. And while all this was going on, the dithering amongst the commissioners and talking about whether we're going to have the courthouse move, the new court, we'll have to have a new courthouse, will it be City Park? Here comes the big thing from across the river. Thun and Janssen, the owners of Wyomissing Industries, they have, in 1926, through a realtor named Harold Blankenbiller, they came up with a plan where the courthouse would move to West Reading. How is that? That would happen in West Reading, you say? Well, what West Reading would do would be partially annexed, and the courthouse would be right across the Penn Street Bridge, looking at that view you have there, and or the picture that was in paper as it was announced by Mr. Blankenbiller, the Blankenbiller plan, with this panoramic view of the courthouse up Penn Street, and it would be in West Reading across the river. Okay, Thun and Janssen had been very successful. The museum was now on the western side of the river by this time, or was in the process. Yeah, it was being completed. And the Reading Hospital was over there. The Buttonwood Street Bridge, they were in the process of trying to work out that as well. They were very active as far as changes, as far as how the different parts of major buildings in Berks County were being located. There were a lot of legal issues with the annexation and the like. When there was some foot dragging on the part of city officials, first off, you can only have a courthouse in a place that is the county seat. And when they said, well, maybe we don't want to annex part of West Reading, so then there was an article about West Reading, Wyomissing, and Shillington would merge and become a super county seat themselves. And well, spoiler alert, that didn't work out. So there was some emotions there. John Blimline one day goes into Mayor William Sharman when they were having a joint meeting about just this issue about what are we going to do with the courthouse, City Hall, and whatever. And he says, Bill, you're from Sinking Spring. Originally, even though he's mayor of Reading, he was raised in Sinking Spring. You're from the western side of the river. Let's face up to the facts. And the courthouse should be on the western side. So Mayor Sharman wasn't sure about his reelection prospects and walks back into the room and throws John Blimline under the bus and says, you know what he just said to me? And the headline in the Reading Times the next day, decried, and he says, Johnny, go over the river. So there was great emotions where people didn't want to have the courthouse in West Reading. So right now we have, in the meanwhile, all these people on juries are holding their bladders or doing whatever they were doing to make arrangements. I never did find that out. Lost in the Woods was a political cartoon in 1929 characterizing how things were going and or not going, and just the things on the trees. New courthouse plans. It's like a damsel in distress kind of thing that but Reading City Council, West Reading Council, West Reading annexation, the lawyers committees, conferences, burgesses, the mayor's conferences, county commissioners, just so many issues was what was being typified there. How did this get resolved? How did the commissioners eventually decide what to do? What they decided was nothing. They let the Reading Times do it. The Reading Times took a poll, and they hired an accounting firm, and they made up ballots. And in the Times, you could cut out your ballot, and you would make your ballot whether you wanted the courthouse to be in Wyoming or over in West Reading, whether it should be where the prison it was in City Park, or whether it should still stay where it is, except it would be a new courthouse. The Reading Times had front page coverage of this. They started May 24th or May 1st, and it went every day. They had front page coverage about their poll that was saving Berks County. The Reading Eagle didn't mention squat about anything going on about the Reading Times poll. And finally, May 24th, the returns were in. 51,000 people voted. 30,000 said, let's keep it where it was. And 14,000 voted Line Box Hill. So hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. The commissioners said, well, the people have spoken. We haven't had to make a decision. We're just going to listen to the people. Okay, we're going to move the courthouse nowhere. We're just going to build it where it is. And we're going to start it once. Yeah, how about that? And that didn't stop the people of Berks County from, all of those commissioners lost in their primaries. Everybody, people had a snoot full of them. But in any event, so they started erection of the courthouse. The people had spoken, and people, that's how they were going to resolve things. In the meanwhile, then the courthouse was vacated, and they temporary quarters at 4th and Cherry Streets was the Nogar building. Doesn't exist anymore. But the 4th and Court Streets, I'm sorry. But the Nogar building was where the courthouse moved to, and temporarily. And December of 1932, the courthouse was dedicated, the new courthouse, and with accommodations. So finally, women jurors in Berks County had nice accommodations. It took that long, more than 10 years after the Barnes Act came into being, they finally had decent digs in which to have their service as jurors. So just a couple of ironic things afterwards. Something that hit me, I didn't realize, Pennsylvania approved having women serve on juries in 1921. You look at here is a list of states that trickled in over the next half century almost, more than half century, of other states that would approve having women jurors. It wasn't automatic by other states like it was with Pennsylvania's legislature. One that surprised the heck out of me, if you look in 1947, I think it is when Massachusetts was, or 49, Massachusetts came in as allowing women jurors, women to serve on juries. but you look at the list, New York was not an instant one. That was 1927. And the last three states to extend the right to women to serve on juries, gee, what a surprise. Alabama, Mississippi, and South Carolina. So surprised I'm in the kitchen here too. Incidentally, the secret void number 2 is equality. Okay, again, equality is the secret void. So that's just a little bit of something to, now there was lots more constitutional litigation, several cases about what to do with jury pool, with gender discrimination and the like, that, and never mind, I have that dangling end there. I can't get good help nowadays. Anyway, even as recently as 1994, there were situations where men were being automatically excluded as jurors in support cases in an Alabama case. So there still has been litigation, even though both genders are serving as jurors, how you treat the gender when they are members of the jury pool has still been the subject of constitutional litigation. So the end result is women achieve the same right as men, which is to try to avoid jury duty as much as they possibly can, but to avoid it with proper accommodations. I came across a quote from a British fellow that says there were probably always more people, men and women, seeking to avoid jury service than there were people trying to serve on a jury. Kevin Crosby said that. So anyway, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. And if you have any questions, I'd be honored to take them. So there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brian. Let's see here. We don't have anything in the Q&A at the moment.
Couldn't he talk faster? Was that one of the questions? Is that it?
No, it was good. And the quality of the sound was good throughout too. So that was nice.
Well, let me see. I guess the people get an hour of continuing legal education, but we'll just keep it a secret that I kept this under an hour. So nobody has any questions like, did they do Kegel exercises to hold off things, or what did the people do? I did make an attempt to try to find out. I asked some of the older lawyers I knew, a couple living at the Highlands, that did they ever hear anybody talk about what it was like in the old days in the courthouse, the old courthouse, in their early years as attorneys, about that, with that. And they said, no, nobody ever talked about that. So the secrets stay quiet with the dead, I guess, right?
Well, with that, I guess we can wrap up for the evening. Thank you very much to everybody who joined us this evening. It was wonderful to have you all. Brian, thank you so much. I have somebody asking if they missed the second word.
Oh, okay. The second word was equality.
And the first one was gender.
Yes. How about that? Gender equality.
There you go.
Yeah, that's the, incidentally, a couple of things. If you want to read about Mary Archer, Ruth, oh boy. We have an article, and I had it written here, in the historical review. Oh, here it is. About what an interesting and heroic figure Mary was. Ruth Schaefer, yes, a rebel with a cause, or two or three. So that's, and there's, the article is on Linebox Hill, and the back and forth about the politics. Anytime you have politics and back and forth, it's a lot of fun to write about, and I try to make it fun for people to read about, because there's lots of vanity involved. And and there's, the article is in the Barrister of, that this presentation was predicated on, which is the plight of Berks County women jurors in the early days. So we went on some journeys away from what we talked about, but everybody's learned a little bit more, I hope, about Anna Dickinson and Mary Archer. And now you can sleep better tonight.
Very good. Well, thank you, Brian, and thank you all for joining us. And we hope we'll see you at some future programs. You can go to our website, berkshistory.org, to find more, and follow us on Facebook.
Thank you.
All right. Good night.
All right. Oh, how do I get out of this? All right.